Perfect. Thanks a million for that, Ben. And I'd also like to thank the BUCS team and the EI team for not only organising this webinar, but also giving us the chance to kind of present at it as well. So just a really brief background about myself and output, and then we'll be talking to Mark as well, where he can kind of fill you in through his background as well a little bit later on. But my name's Darragh Whelan. I'm one of the co-founders of Output Sports and the Chief Scientific Officer. It actually originated as part of myself and one of my co-founders, Martin O'Reilly, our PhD work. So we're actually a university spin-out, so kind of know the space very, very well, and would have worked with a lot of not only teams in the sporting side of University College Dublin here in Ireland, but also as well on the teaching and research side of things as well. We basically spent our PhDs looking at wearable sensing technology and sensor technology as a mechanism of assessing a wide variety of performance metrics with it. And following the end of those PhDs in about 2017, we spent about 2 years speaking to practitioners and trying to understand their needs and trying to fit our research around that. And I know there's actually a couple of people on the call who we would have spoken through in that process, not least Mark actually as well, who've really helped with the development of the technology as well. And then that allowed us to basically release our first product in March 2020, which every time I say, I always smile because it feels like a million years ago, not only just from running a startup, but also from what has happened in the world since with it as well. What I'm going to do really briefly is just give you a quick overview of the technologies, just to put in context, I guess, what we do, and therefore put in context around how Mark has been using the system as well with it. So I'm going to show our system as a whole, which is made up of capture and hub. Capture is basically sensor-based technology, which basically is these two things, a phone and a wearable sensor. And that allows you to capture everything as diverse as jumps, balance, ground contact times, barbell velocity, Nordic analysis with it as well, speed gates and light gates functionality in the system. So basically for the practitioners on the call, hopefully you'll get excited by the fact that you can do all of that testing with a system as small as this, basically with it as well, a mobile phone and a small wearable sensor. And then from a kind of budget standpoint as well, hopefully some of you will be excited as well, as you can start to see where you get an awful lot of bang for your buck in terms of being able to test lots of different performance metrics with just the one system as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share my screen briefly and show you, first of all, our capture system. So this is our mobile system that basically allows the capture of all the exercise data. And the way it works is the whole system is basically cloud-based with it as well. And that allows you to collect data on a range of different athletes, of whoever you're collecting data with, really simply and effectively, and for all of that data to be pushed to a cloud server so it can be shared and accessed from anywhere as well. We do have wellness metrics into it and tracking of height and weight, but just for time constraints, I might just show you one or two of our objective markers, which is predominantly what the system is about. And as I kind of alluded to in that introduction, one of our main differentiators is we test lots of different things. So I'd be here all day, I think, if I was running through each of these specific tests with you. What I might do is show you one or two to get a feel for the system, and then I'll show you the hub where that data is then housed as well. So one that we see very commonly used across lots of different environments is our power metrics or our counter movement jump metrics. So many of you on the call will know a really good indicative measure of readiness to train or around monitoring fatigue, etc. with it as well. How it works is basically that I'll be popping the sensor on the foot. So anytime you hit on those instructions, it'll show you where to place the sensor and give you instructions at the same. So I'm literally doing what you saw on the video there, which is popping the sensor on my foot. And then once the sensor's on that body location, all you need to do is do the task and you'll get the jump height out as well. That must be my nerves allowing me to get 28% better than my last jump, which is still not too impressive with it as well. So that data, as I alluded to, is housed then under my athlete profile, which means that I can look back over any of my historical jumps and compare and contrast that, and then see very efficiently where I am in comparison to my longitudinal data over the day, the week, the month. So you can see here, I've set this at ±1 standard deviation as my normative level. I can see I'm just right at the tip of that level, but I can also see periods of maybe when I was fatigued or just peaking at that stage with it as well. That's a good example of a kind of test that the system does, and that'd be very similar to many of our reactive strength index tests with it, our mobility tests with it, our strength endurance tasks, etc. One good example of a rep-based exercise that we capture, and again, very commonly used among an awful lot of our end users, is our barbell velocity functionality. So our barbell velocity functionality works very similar to maybe other devices that you've seen used that will measure the speed of the bar and subsequently what zone an individual is training with or training within. So the way this will work is that you can set minimum thresholds, or you can set threshold ranges. So at the moment, I'm going to try and get in between 0.7 and 1 meter per second rep on rep. And that means that when I'm moving the bar, in this case, you can imagine me doing, if I'm hitting the range I want to be in, you can see I'm getting positive reinforcement around the same. If I'm going too slow, I also get that reinforcement around the same with it as well. And at the end of the repetitions, or at the end of the set with it as well, what I'll get is summary metrics of how well I've completed those sets with it, as well as rep on rep analysis with it as well. So I can have a look back over any of those repetitions I did in any of the different metrics that we would compute as well. To flag then as well, the other thing with any of those tests with it, it is very easy then to use that in an environment where there may be lots of athletes training with it. Again, probably pretty pertinent to this, where you may have an awful lot of individuals using systems with it. You can very easily quick swap between different athletes, and the next athlete just comes in and completes the task, whether it be a jump or a barbell squat or whatever it might be. Just one last feature I'll show you before taking you into the hub, which is where all this data is stored, is a new feature that we've embedded that actually uses the camera on the phone. You're going to get a pretty horrible picture of myself here. It's basically my front-facing camera with it as well. I'm just going to try and prop it up here, and fingers crossed it'll hold there for me. I'm not full. But basically what this feature is it's a set of light gates, basically you can think of it. So what it will do is it will track my shoulders, and when I go through that line, and subsequently when I come back through, and it will give me the time in between those 2 points. So you can imagine in a t-test where you're going out, going left, right, and then coming back through like a single set of timing gates on it. So if I go through that, and then I come back through it again, it will give me that set of time that it took between that stage with it as well. So basically, as you can see there, it's a pretty multifunctional tool, and I've only shown you 3 tested embeds in it as well. But we'll also do things like ground contact times for strides or hurdle hops with it, range of motion testing for physios or for athletic trainers, Nordic analysis as well, reactive strength jumps, stability, so overall functional stability during core exercises or during balance exercises, and then strength endurance and strength pathway tasks, where it will look at the range of motion that a limb goes through in certain tasks, and Mark will be talking about that. What I'm going to do is then just show you where all of that information is then housed, which is within our hub. So this is, again, a cloud-based system, so it doesn't matter where I capture the data using the capture system, it will all be housed within this here with it as well. And what that allows practitioners to do very simply then is to look at individuals' key performance indicators, and then set thresholds for those, whether they be in a green zone, an amber zone, or a red zone, and based off percentages or standard deviations. What that allows an individual to do really, really quickly is then quantify those athletes that are in need of attention, because it will top load the person with the most amount of reds, or those who are the top performing athletes by quantifying those with the most amount of greens. And any of that data can be looked at in more depth with it. So if I go into here, I can look at my jumps over the previous month, over the previous year, amalgamate it, best each month, best each week, etc., with it. And I can also look at things maybe which are more rep-based with it as well, rather than those summary metrics, get more in-depth analysis of the same. So the set that I did before, just there moving the sensor, I can see that rep on rep analysis with it, and also compare different sets against each other to see how I compare set on set with different metrics, whether they be, in this case, maybe mean force or something like that with it as well. All of that can be analyzed at an individual level or at a group level. And again, in a university setting, I would imagine this is quite useful, where you can have different sports and then placing the athletes within those, so you can view, our sports science group is the most heavily populated one. I can see all the sports scientists and then look at any of those individuals and compare and contrast them. We also have the ability then to have live leaderboards within that system as well with it. So you'll see probably my jump height, which I've just done there, that will come up through it as well. Anybody who does a jump with the system, no matter where they are in the world, it will actually populate that data. But what we found being used, particularly in actually college environments, is where maybe this is on a screen in the gym and it's driving intent within a session as well. You can also export any of that data, both from a CSV standpoint with it as well, and in exercise or by athlete or by exercise or everything together with it. But what we found a lot of individuals doing is exporting it in a report mode, which is basically the ability to generate reports at either an athlete or a group level. And should you be using the same reports, multiple locations with it, it's very easy to save that report then as a template and then literally just generate it out very, very quickly. So this will be our jump height leaderboard, I think, of all time with it. And basically what you'll see is that will generate a report out in a PDF manner, which you can then share with the individual teams, the coaches, the practitioners, or whoever makes the most sense for it to do as well. So just to give you a feel for what that looks like. Once it's generated out, this is our all-time leaderboard, which is, I've just realized, pretty depressing for myself with it. Maybe I shouldn't have led with that one with it. But that's the Output Sports system in a nutshell with it. So Capture gives you the ability to collect lots of different components of fitness with a single wearable sensor or camera-based system with it as well. And because you have one system that can do all of that with it as well, it then allows you to feed that information very, very quickly into into our hub, which allows for the quantification, analysis of that data, live leaderboarding to drive intent, and then report generate as well. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing those screens, and then I'm going to just talk to Mark a little bit around how they found using the system within Sheffield Hallam with it, to give a bit of context around the same. So Mark, first of all, thanks a million for doing this and helping us out with it as well. But just if you could start off maybe by introducing yourself and your own background as well.
Yeah, so thanks for the invitation, Darragh and BUCS. So my name is Dr. Mark Helme. I'm currently a lecturer in sports science, specifically focused on biomechanics and strength and conditioning at Sheffield Hallam University, having just completed my PhD at Leeds Beckett University in sports coaching. So I'm more familiar with the BUCS world and those associated teams and practitioners that would find themselves in university sport. My background is pretty varied. So I spent about 13 to 14 years in FE, and I've been an S&C coach alongside my academic practice since S&C was a thing in the UK, so about the early 2000s. So I've done 100,000 hours plus in the gym, plus my own research, plus teaching S&C to various students at various levels across level 1 to level 7. So you pretty much name it around university life, I've seen it and done it. My research was mainly in a little bit of biomechanics, but my goal was to look at strength and strength asymmetries within rugby league players. So I did some quantification of research in the lab, look at the rear foot elevator split squat, and then I've gone out to the field and measured injuries and strength and speed and power in the field. So kind of in terms of looking at an applied S&C practitioner, researcher and academic, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So if I can attest to that, having seen you present at a conference and then seeing you train an individual group of teams as well. So it's great, and that's what we have all been about, an output of combining that research expertise around with that practitioner and usability. So that's been great to partner around that. Would you be able to talk about how Sheffield Hallam have been using the Output Sports system then to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a challenging year to be able to use anything really. So where we would typically use a piece of technology like Output would be thinking about what skills they would leave with and what practice is needed by them. So typically we've used it for VBT type teaching. So students go and collect barbell velocity and jump-based activities. That could be an RSI or a loaded counter movement jump, doing force velocity profiling. And just getting students to be comfortable in collecting velocity data, just in the mechanics of how to get it, where to put sensors, and then getting more comfortable with what a desired range might be for velocity, for hypertrophy, for strength, for power, for example. and then handling the data. So you've just described some really neatly there some of the functions of report generation, whereas we would probably challenge our students to collect reports and then look at how appropriate those reports are for the things they are wanting to do. So that's from teaching them to go from the course to practice. And then the other side of things, being an academic, would be to look at dissertation students. So it's a really fantastic tool for the students to be able to go and collect some really good, meaningful data quickly, easily, ethically. That's another thing, without having to be queuing up left, right, and centre to book biomechanic lab time. So that's been a real game changer for S&C students to be able to collect biomechanical data without having to use Kistler force plates and Vicon and Qualisys and all these other different tools. And that then starts to bleed out into how they can use that with more and more people. So we're putting more tools in more hands more of the time. The really kind of important thing for us was that kind of group level functionality. One of the things that's become more and more evident in how we go about using technology within teaching is GDPR. So being able to set up groups as an academic member of staff, teaching group A, B, C, and then having codes. So we can assign a student a particular code that, unless they decide to go and tell the world what their particular designated code is, nobody else knows who they are. So we can collect a lot of data from teaching and learning practices as well. So the students can use it, they know what their data is. We can release it to the students so they can manipulate the data and learn from it. We can look at it from an academic point of view. If we can embed some of our research activity to teaching and learning, that's even better, without breaking the GDPR concerns. And I know certainly from a team point of view, I've been a person as well that's gone knocking on doors in the university sport gyms. Can I do some research on your athletes? I need to do some real world research. I need to come and test you guys. So having that kind of confidentiality and usability, me bringing the technology into the university team training space, has been really helpful. So it's been quite a diverse tool for us, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities to do things that a pure biomechanics lab wouldn't have allowed us to do.
And I know you've worked an awful lot in that practitioner space. I know a lot of people on the call will be, working with teams day in, day out as well. So it'd be really useful to kind of get your thoughts around the implementation of the system in that type of environment and how it may differ slightly from the academic or teaching side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been an S&C coach for, as you can tell by the hairstyle, about 20 years. Mainly in semi-professional in youth sports. So I don't have a lot of time. And I work in rugby league, as you can tell by the northern accent, so we don't have a lot of money either. So whatever we do has to be A, cost effective, and B, time effective, and it has to have an impact. So I can find something that's cheap and cheerful, but if it doesn't help, then there's no point. So I remember you guys came over in the early product development days, and I showed you one of the sessions. You and Martin looked at each other and went, this strap ain't going to cut it. It's like, this should be more robust. Like, our guys were going at it hard for 25 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Yeah, and the turnover was massive. But I can't say every rep and I can't say everybody doing everything. So it's really helpful to be able to have some tools I can put in certain players' hands, and because of time restrictions, I wouldn't necessarily use it with every person at every repetition. There are some guys who are so down the kind of pecking order in terms of what they can do, measuring their velocity, measuring their range of movement. It's not needed. But there are some athletes who would benefit from that additional level of depth and detail. So I put the velocity measure on their thigh to make sure they hit the range of movement. Yeah, great. You can put weight on the bar, brilliant. But I've just measured the fact that as soon as you do that, your range of movement drops by 15 degrees. I want you to get that load down, that extra. If that doesn't say 80 degrees by the end of it, you have to get the weight back off again. So it's having that level of analytics that supports coaching, and not being that tablet coach who just looks at a screen all the time. It's being selective about how and when and who I use that with. So they get a more meaningful impact. There's objective data that I can then use to show how we've progressed, but it hasn't interfered or detracted from the quality of the session, and that can be a concern. Yeah, I don't want to be the laptop coach who doesn't look at an athlete or has a conversation with somebody I can give them the tablet, I can give them the output, and it's robust enough and simple enough for them to use on their own, and I can get it cloud-based afterwards.
See, Ben has appeared, which means that our time is coming to an end, but just a couple of things just to flag at the end of it. It's so great to hear you talk about that process of, we've seen it work in environments of, you know, elite sports, like literally working with the FA and working with Leinster Rugby and working with, you know, NFL #1 draft picks, and where they have all of this technology available. But also what we've been really excited about is to see the use of the technology in maybe environments where exactly that budget might come in to impact it, with its space environments and space constrictions as well. So what we've been really exciting, and it's always been kind of at the core of everything we've wanted to do at Output, is to democratize or ubiquitize sports performance testing. And hopefully you'll have seen in the beginnings of this how we're going about doing that process. Just to finish up, again, I'll just share this. Should anyone want to see any more information regarding the system with it as well? I think I've got the website there shared, just maybe not, yeah, perfect. Outputsports.com is the best place to go. One thing we didn't touch on at all was around the validity and reliability today with it, but feel free to kind of have a look in around those and test with it. And for anyone who wants any more information with it, feel free to get in contact with the contact details below. Hello@Output Sports, you'll always get us on that. And should you want to see more, that arrange a demo there as well. We'll, one of us will hop on and show you the system. So I'll stop sharing there. So again, thanks so much again for all the time, and look forward to talking again at the Q&A at the end of the session. Thank you.